Tonight, hundreds of manufacturing jobs at risk. Mitsubishi is cutting around a quarter of its staff at its West Lothian factory, blaming market conditions.
We're live in Livingston. Also making the headlines, still missing almost 1 year on. The police start fresh searches and detectives appeal for help from the public for an Edinburgh mum who disappeared.
The Grenfell inquiry criticises decades of fire safety failings, but people here are still living in fear in flats with the same flammable cladding.
And an evolution, not a revolution. Steve Clarke's vision for Scotland ahead of tomorrow's Poland game. And confirmation you can watch it free on the STV player. I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6.
Good evening. More than 430 workers look likely to lose their jobs at Mitsubishi's electrics factory in West Lothian. The plant in Livingston is the largest heat pump manufacturer in the UK and currently employs over 1,600 people.
It's looking to cut its workforce down to around 1,200 within the next 45 days. Staff were taken into the canteen to be told about the cuts, which the firm says was an extremely difficult decision. Our reporter Lewis Mickey is outside the factory tonight. And Lewis, Mitsubishi is a big employer in the area and, as you touched on in your report, has been there for a while.
Yeah, John, this factory here has produced air conditioning units and now heat pumps here in Livingston since 1993. And at the moment, there are about 1,600 people employed here, but they've been told that more than a quarter of those jobs are now at risk of redundancy within the next 45 days. Now, the company, which is the UK's largest producer of heat pumps, has blamed this on what it called a deterioration of the market in Europe over the last wee while. And this is news that has really shocked people, not just here in this factory, but across all of Livingston. As their shift finished at 10 to 4 this afternoon, workers had been told not to speak to the media. STV News understands that yesterday, in their staff canteen, they were told a redundancy consultation is underway that will see 436 of them lose their jobs. Mitsubishi Electric Air Conditioning Systems Europe has been a strong employer in Livingston for 3 decades. Just last year, the business celebrated 30 years in the town and boasted of its hope to continue to make a positive impact on the creation of quality green jobs. But today, more than a quarter of its 1,600-strong workforce were told their roles are at risk of redundancy. A letter to staff said a deterioration in demand due to conditions in mainland Europe was the cause of the move. It said particular areas of the operation had been identified as suitable for redundancies. Most of these are production operators. The business will try to avoid any compulsory redundancies and are looking for volunteers to come forward. A question now for politicians: what can they do to help?
I will be reaching out with some urgency to governments at all levels, whether that's the local authority, whether it's the Scottish Government and our agencies, but also to the UK Government, because I do think we owe it to the workforce to ensure that no stone is left unturned.
Speaking to Ian Murray, the Secretary of State for Scotland, who I've just spoken to in the Commons, and he's agreed to meet with the workforce firstly to talk to them about how we can support them, and secondly to meet with the management as well to see what, if anything, the UK Government can do to secure their order book.
Well, there's due to be a meeting here tomorrow at 11 a.m. between staff and management to talk about these proposals. Following that, individual consultations will take place. Mitsubishi have told us it was an extremely difficult decision to make, but have said they remain committed to the facility here. The Scottish Government say they've already had a meeting with the company and they will continue to work with them and the UK Government going forward. But ultimately, this is a worrying and uncertain time for staff here. John.
Lewis in Livingston, thank you. The First Minister says eradicating child poverty is the Scottish Government's first and foremost priority. John Swinney delivered his first programme for government just 24 hours after his finance secretary had announced £500 million of cuts in public spending.
Mr Swinney promised whole family support to tackle poverty. However, opposition parties claimed ministers are out of ideas and money, with no strategy or plan. Our political correspondent Ewan Petrie reports.
There's a queue outside this food pantry. Every morning it opens. More and more families are needing more intensive help. Belly volunteers here and uses the TOTS group next door.
I'm so worried about the future that it's very difficult to manage our life this time because everything is expensive nowadays.
They're expecting demand to increase here as cuts to services mean more referrals, but no extra cash to help people out of poverty.
There needs to be funding to get families to that point. If we're not enabling families to do this for themselves, then we're never going to eradicate child poverty. The Scottish Child Payment has made a huge difference for families, but there's still 44% of families that have got children living in poverty in Govan, and that's not acceptable for anyone. It's a national disgrace that people are in this much need in this day and age.
At this mother and toddler group in Aberdeen, there are also fears over the impact of £500 million of cuts.
There's going to be things that it's going to affect people. We're just a tiny wee community centre and we would love to have it filled to the brim, but obviously we would need a bit of funding to enable that to happen as well.
The First Minister promised changes to how poverty is tackled as he set out his plans for the year ahead.
The key objective of the approach that we will take will be to deliver significant reform of the work of public services to deliver whole family support extensively across the country. This will create the conditions that support more parents into employment and reinforce our work to eradicate child poverty.
John Swinney also promised to invest £1 billion in childcare, new rent controls and to reduce NHS backlogs.
The First Minister is basically trying to make it impossible for his government to fail by promising nothing. Under John Swinney, the SNP are admitting that the SNP are out of ideas and out of ambition for Scotland.
We have an SNP government with no vision, no strategy and no plan. And that's why it's getting clearer by the day that Scotland needs change. All the signs are that the SNP are just simply running down the clock on the last 18 months of this Parliament.
With warnings of more financial pain to come, the First Minister will face more questions on how his priority will be delivered. Ewan Petrie, STV News.
Our political editor Colin Mackay joins us now from Holyrood. So Colin, what did you make of it?
Well, John Swinney said that he'd sat through every programme for government in the Scottish Parliament 25 years, but this was his first as First Minister. Well, I've sat through every single one of them from every First Minister, and this is probably the thinnest I've seen, and there's a good reason for that, because the Scottish Government is skint. Yesterday I told you they were facing a £1 billion black hole, but there is some investment announced today. Creative Scotland cuts have been reversed after a host of celebrities protested that the country was facing a cultural catastrophe. The Greens were in government at this time last year. Now they're out and they're angry because the commitment to free school meals for every P6 and P7 child has been dropped now. Now, John Swinney says that his government will focus on tackling child poverty and economic growth, but he also acknowledged today his real political priorities of delivery and rebuilding trust.
All right, Colin, from Holyrood, thanks very much. Now, it's almost a year since missing Edinburgh mum Casha Smith was last seen. And today, police have begun more searches close to her home for any clues about her disappearance.
Detectives believe she may have come to harm, and they hope fresh attention on the case may encourage someone to come forward with new information. Here's our senior reporter, Gordon Cree.
In the woods near to the Calder estate on the western edge of Edinburgh, the undergrowth is thick. The area has been searched before, but police say they have reason to be looking here again. It's a stone's throw from the flat where 34-year-old Casha Smith was living with a partner before she went missing.
So we've spoke to everybody involved in the investigation, everyone that knew Casha, and we're going to keep speaking to them as further information comes to light. Who and what each person's involvement is in the investigation, I'm not going to go into just now, but we will keep all possibilities open to us and we'll investigate anything that we're told.
The last time Casha was known to be safe and well was a FaceTime call with a friend on the 10th of October last year. But it wasn't until January she was reported missing. In March, her daughter appealed for help.
It feels like I'm living the worst dream that we could ever possibly imagine.
Police say that led to some vital new information, although they're not at this stage able to share what it is. I understand it remains the case that no one has been questioned as a suspect. The flat where Casha was staying is just through the trees here. The area police are searching now is on the other side of the canal, through the trees there, deep undergrowth there. If the answer to her disappearance does indeed lie in the local area, there's plenty of places around here that are being worked on. Outside her flat, birthday cards, flowers and photos have been left by Casha's family. Although it appears after all this time the investigation into her disappearance is no further forward, the police insist they're continuing to work hard on finding the answers those close to her desperately need. Gordon Cree, STV News, Edinburgh.
It's been 7 years since the disastrous Grenfell fire in West London claimed the lives of 72 people. The inquiry into that disaster is criticising decades of fire safety failings. But people here are still living in fear in flats with the same flammable cladding.
One homeowner in Lansfield Quay in Glasgow has been forced to leave his home. He's amongst thousands awaiting remediation works on their properties to make them safe. Our reporter Rahim Cham has the details.
The 6-year inquiry into Grenfell produced a 1,700-page damning report, finding systematic dishonesty by the manufacturers of cladding, successive governments' missed opportunities to act, and failure in London's fire brigade training and strategy to evacuate the building.
I want to start with an apology on behalf of the British state to each and every one of you, and indeed to all of the families affected by this tragedy.
Here in Scotland, there's still real concern it could happen again.
That over there was the spot where my little one used to make his tent. So yeah, this brings back a lot of good memories, happy memories.
Abhijit Kadwi bought his 2-bedroom flat in 2018, but left just after a year once he learned it had combustible cladding, blamed for fueling the Grenfell Tower fire.
Dagenham block that caught fire, they were also undergoing the remediation works, and they were into their 3rd or 4th month of remediation when the incident took place. So what I'm really trying to say is, it is not over until it is over. So until the last panel of cladding gets taken off from our building, we don't feel safe.
Miller Homes built the block of flats. It started its own remediation works, removing flammable cladding. It also hired fire wardens, doing routine perimeter checks and improved fire alarms.
Our builders, who are Miller Homes and Kala Homes, they have agreed to foot the remediation bill, but the devil is in the detail. So, all that we have from them is like an agreement, which is on paper. So basically, they need to sort of put it into action.
These buildings in Lansfield Quay is not an isolated case. A total of 393 buildings have been identified to have HPL cladding. So far, the government has included 105 of the buildings to be part of the pilot remediation scheme. However, only one building has been seen with work done so far. Scottish government figures show some 95 tower blocks, 253 schools, 5 hospitals and 7 care homes are among the buildings in Scotland with HPL cladding earmarked for removal. The Scottish government recently passed new laws and has money from Westminster to fix buildings with unsafe cladding. But just £9 million has been spent from almost £100 million budgeted.
That's where we need to get the process quickened up. I recognise that and said that in the housing and the cladding debate in terms of what we're looking to do. So there's funding being set aside. When the programme picks up, we'll obviously be looking to pick up the pace in terms of that as well. But we are picking the pace up quite quickly now.
Meanwhile, the likes of Abhijit Kadwi are left in limbo. So far, compensated with 2 fire wardens, enhanced alarm system and a warning sign for a very big problem. Rahim Cham, STV, Lansfield Quay.
Let's go to Westminster and our correspondent Paris Goutsianis. Now, Paris, we heard from the Prime Minister there in Raheem's report. Take us through the political reaction.
Well, John, it was a sombre atmosphere in the Commons earlier. The Prime Minister revealed that he recently made a private visit to the shell of Grenfell Tower. He laid a wreath and even went up to the 23rd floor to try and understand what those caught up in the tragedy experienced. There was political unity on the need for reform and justice, but it's difficult to see how that happens quickly. Companies directly implicated are having future government contracts barred, but the wider reforms to the construction sector, they could take years to enact. As for criminal action against those responsible for Grenfell, which would act as a deterrent to councils, landlords and developers across the UK, police and prosecutors here in London say they still have so much evidence to go through that it won't be until 2026 that they even make a decision on that.
And Paris, while there was unity on Grenfell, of course the politics never stops for long at Westminster. There's also an update on the Tory leadership contest.
Indeed, we had the first ballot among Tory MPs. The former Home Secretary Priti Patel received the fewest votes and is eliminated. Among the 5 remaining candidates, Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch received the most votes. The final 4 will make their case at the party conference later this month before a public vote of Tory members between the final 2. If that all sounds a bit I'm a celebrity, remember that the prize for the winner is rebuilding the Conservative Party. So the Bush-Tucker trial comes at the end of this contest.
Paris at Westminster, thank you. Now, it was a day for a city to celebrate its own. Glasgow Warriors were welcomed with a fanfare at the City Chambers after their triumph at the United Rugby Championship. The team won the league title in dramatic fashion in South Africa 2 months ago for only the 2nd time in their history. The Warriors gathered at George Square ahead of a civic reception in their honour, and Vidushi Tiwari went along to join them.
A hero's welcome for the Warriors' return from the city that gave them their name. The celebration still going 2 months after lifting the championship trophy in Pretoria.
Coming back into the club and the excitement that's around the place is, you can definitely notice the difference. The joy and the elation after the full-time whistle just built a bit of belief in the squad. You can't wait to get back into a season, but we're fully aware of what it'll take to try and go and achieve something else.
Trailing behind the Bulls by 13 points, it was a historic comeback.
Glasgow Warriors are the URC champions!
And upon their return to Scotland, a Scotstoun celebration for the ages. Their captain says it's pushing them to bring home more silverware.
It's kind of solidified a lot of the belief we've had, and I think now that you know what the levels are, what the standard is, I think the intensity's just kind of gone up a notch. We've got a lot of young guys coming through, bringing a lot of fresh energy, and try and find the balance between what worked for us and what worked well, and working hard at that, and then just wanting the challenge to be different.
And now the city showing its appreciation with a special reception, welcoming more than 150 Warriors, not just players but everyone from the club.
It's actually been incredible. I had no idea they were so tall, quite a lot of them. I don't think I've ever met anyone 6'9" before. It's great, it puts Glasgow on the map. We're already on the map, but it's a great win for Glasgow and we're really super excited. That mindset's there now, you've already done it, so long may it continue. Let's go for the next one, number 2.
And their fight to replicate that stunning result begins again later this month, as they prepare to take on Ulster in Belfast, with Glasgow standing behind them. Vidushi Tiwari, STV News.
Now, Jamie is at the Grange in Edinburgh with tonight's sport.
STV Sport, sponsored by the Casha Smith Autumn Sale.
Yes, good evening from a wonderfully sunny Grange Cricket Club in Edinburgh, where earlier we witnessed a record-breaking T20 international match between Scotland and Australia. More on that in just a moment, but we start tonight with football and the breaking news that Scotland's Nations League opener against Poland tomorrow night at Hampden will be available to watch free on the STV player. That comes after a deal that was struck this afternoon, which also includes Scotland's trip to Portugal on Sunday, which will be available also to watch on the STV player. Now, well, Steve Clarke says that it's evolution, not revolution, for his New League side as they get started on their latest campaign. He believes the players have got to put their disappointing Euros behind them and look to smash through the glass ceiling, which will see them compete with the world's best international sides. With more, here's Ronnie Charters.
A new campaign and a few new faces. Steve Clarke opting to freshen up his squad as the Nations League gets underway tomorrow. The likes of Ben Doak, Ryan Gauld and Max Johnson all involved, and the Scotland boss says it's given everyone a lift.
It's evolution, not revolution. Obviously this time we have a significant number of injuries that has probably impacted my squad selection a little bit, which means that I've had to dip down into Scots under-21 squad probably too many times. For the young boys who've come into the squad, they've brought that enthusiasm and that breath of fresh air that galvanise and give the senior players a little bit more life.
After the disappointment of the Euros, Scotland now face the tough task of Group A of the Nations League against Poland, Portugal and Croatia. So how do we start competing regularly with the best teams in the world?
You get there the first time, we didn't do what we wanted to do. You get there the second time, we didn't do what you want to do. So you have to keep looking to get there. And you have to target the glass ceiling and say, no Scottish team's ever done it. Probably a little bit more quality when we get to that level, when you're playing against opponents of the level that we played against in the summer. So it's slowly trying to find a formula that will break the glass ceiling.
Well, part of trying to find that formula for Clarke was a debrief with senior players and staff on their return from Germany. Captain Andy Robertson insisting the phone call he had was hugely positive, allowing the team to get back on track.
I think the manager was in a really good place when he phoned me. He was looking forward to what we could do next, and I think now we have to go and do that. He's now made changes within the squad. There's new players in, there's younger players in, and so it's up to them to now show that they're good enough to play for Scotland.
Elsewhere, the SFA has confirmed Graham Jones will leave his role as performance director to take up the job of sporting director at Hearts. Ronnie Charters, STV Sport.
And the details of how to watch tomorrow's game on the STV Player coverage begins at 7:30, kick-off at 7:45. STV Player will also have Sunday's game, that's Portugal versus Scotland, live again at 7:30. Now to today's proceedings at the Grange Club here, and it was a record breaker, but sadly not in Scotland's favour. Australia won the toss and put Scotland into bat. George Munsey making some big boundaries earlier on before going out for 27. Captain Richie Berrington added 23, Matt Cross 27, but Scotland were eventually dismissed all out for just 154. In came the Aussies, and while Scotland made an early breakthrough, Captain Mitch Marsh joined Travis Head in the middle to put on the biggest power play total in T20 cricket history. Travis Head himself, the joint fastest 50 in this format. Australia went on to win by 7 wickets in less than 10 overs. And after the match, I caught up with Scotland vice-captain Matt Cross.
We came up against a very good team. I think we started well with the bat, and on a slightly tricky surface, I think we got to a score that was probably 20-25 below par, because I think the quality of their bowling and ultimately the way they played in that second innings was incredible, but we don't have much time to put it right. It's one of those experiences for us as Scotland cricketers. Playing at home is amazing, and like you said, it doesn't happen enough, but the public buy-in, and it would be great, to see bigger crowds and more people come to these games, and unfortunately that's not really possible at the moment, but one day I'm sure there will be, and the love for the game is there, and it's time to get invested in it.
Well, it was a sellout crowd here at the Grange today, a fantastic atmosphere, and we caught up with some of the spectators after the game concluded.
It's a really good outing for the Scottish crowd. I feel like the Scottish crowd really needs some cricket over here. They feel really passionate, and they got it.
It was great. I'm coming back on Saturday, and I think this was the best atmosphere I've had in a while. It's nice to have a bigger crowd in for once.
We've tried to go to as many games at Dundee, at Fort Hill in the summer as well. It's just been great to let the kids, inspire the kids to play cricket, and definitely it's all good things that'll come from that, more kids playing cricket.
I love just watching cricket. That's not like all night, 24/7. Cricket.
Elsewhere today, Celtic women advanced to the final round of the Champions League qualifying, coming from behind in Finland to win 3-1 after extra time. Rangers are in action this evening. They're away to Arsenal, and head coach John Potter says their excitement at taking on such strong opponents.
It definitely brings that level of excitement. For me, I always want to. My ambition is to be the best, and I want to coach at the best level possible. And I've never been shy of doing the work along the way. And I think that's just something that definitely reflects into my players. They're all hungry to be the best and want to be the best. We're proving that we're up and thereabouts in Scotland, and the next level is Champions League.
And that's all your sport this evening.
STV Sport, sponsored by the CR Smith Autumn Sale.
And now your weather forecast from Sean.
Light winds rolling in from the west. We'll be joined by some very welcomed ice creams. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
A very good evening to you. Now, ironically, even though we're into the start of autumn, I'm about to talk to you about some of the warmest weather of the year on the way. If you're watching from Argyll and Bute in the Highlands, we could be heading for the mid-20s Friday and Saturday. Lots of lovely weather to come here. Now, through tonight, we still hang on to a lot of clouds, central, eastern and southern parts. Still some drizzly showers around as well. Temperatures here about 11 or 12 degrees, clearer skies in the northwest, allowing those temperatures back down to cool values tonight, about 6 degrees Celsius. Stirlingshire, Argyll and Bute and also the Highlands. Now, tomorrow we'll have a lot of cloud across eastern parts, streaming its way westwards through the central belt. Probably the best of the cloud breaks across lights of Ayrshire, but the best of the sunshine throughout the day across northwestern parts. Temperatures are starting to creep up for us. Oban, Fort William, 19-20 degrees Celsius, a lot higher in the next couple of days. By the time we get to Friday, look at those temperatures, 24-25 degrees Celsius. Central and eastern parts, we've got a little bit more cloud around, but even here the temperatures are still getting into the low 20s, so for all of us it will be turning quite a bit warmer in the next couple of days. But specifically so, I think the top spots are probably going to be around the lights of Morar, Knoydart and Loch Shiel. Temperatures 24-25 degrees Celsius. So yes, as I say, some of the warmest weather of the year so far, and here we are in September. A lot of cloud around on Saturday, drizzly showers in the east, bits of sunshine again in the northwest.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
And that's it from us.
Have a good night.
Good night.